guys, it's Morgan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the series Wonder Man. Now, if you haven't seen Wonder Man, there will be spoilers in this review. So stop watching if you don't want to be spoiled. So here's my review of the series Wonder Man. It was really sweet that the show started with a flashback of Simon Williams seeing the movie Wonder Man with his dad when he was little, since it showed why playing Wonder Man meant so much to Simon. And seeing Simon giving himself a pep talk before he was called onto the set of American Horror Story made me root for him. So I felt sorry for Simon when his character was cut, but at the same time, I also understood why it happened, since it was obvious that all the notes that Simon was bringing to the scene was getting on the director and producer's nerves. And if that wasn't upsetting enough for Simon, when he got home to his apartment, he found out that his girlfriend Vivian was in the process of moving out. It was funny when Simon met Trevor Slattery at the movie theater and recognized him, and Trevor thought that Simon recognized him from when he played the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, but Simon actually recognized him from an episode of a TV show that Trevor was on, which obviously surprised Trevor, since no one, himself included, remembered he did that episode. And when he asked Simon how he was, Simon told him that he stole the episode. And meeting Trevor worked out well for Simon, since Simon found out from Trevor about the Wonder Man auditions. Even though Simon's agent, Janelle Jackson, told Simon that she couldn't get him an audition for Wonder Man, it wasn't a surprise that Simon secretly got the audition himself behind Janelle's back, since Wonder Man was his dream role. And even though it was obvious that Janelle was going to be upset when she found out what Simon had done, and she was, things ended up working out well for Simon, since Janelle told him that his Wonder Man audition got him the opportunity to film a self-tape for another project. It was nice seeing Trevor giving Simon advice on how to get out of his head before Simon went into the audition room for Wonder Man. So it was upsetting to find out that all of Trevor's interactions with Simon had been planned, and so he wouldn't have to go back to jail to finish out his sentence for what he did in Iron Man 3. Trevor was helping Agent Cleary get Simon into custody because of his powers. But I was thinking that Trevor was going to actually start to like Simon and stop helping Agent Cleary. And I was right. Since Simon was having trouble filming his self-tape, It wasn't a surprise when he texted Trevor and asked him to help him. But before Trevor went to Simon's apartment, Agent Cleary gave him a ring and told him to wear the ring, and then when he got to Simon's apartment, put the ring on Simon's computer, and Agent Cleary would handle the rest remotely. However, that plan didn't work out right away, since when Trevor got to Simon's apartment, Simon came down and told Trevor that they would have to film somewhere else and used his breakup as an excuse, saying it was hard to focus in his apartment, when actually Simon didn't want Trevor to see the state of his apartment since his powers caused an earthquake. You could tell that Trevor was touched after Simon defended him against his former co-star, Joe Pantiatello, after they went to Joe's house to film Simon's self-tape. And I was hoping that this would start making Trevor second guess helping Agent Cleary, but after Simon defended Trevor, they ended up leaving Joe's house, and Simon decided to go back to his apartment to film the self-tape. And after it was filmed and Simon left the room, Trevor put the ring on Simon's computer. And you could also tell that Trevor was in shock when he saw the state of the wall in Simon's apartment. And you could tell that Simon was worried about what Trevor was going to say about it. But Trevor didn't say anything about it, and he agreed with Simon that they should have pizza. During the flashback, when Simon was at the doctor's when he was little, with his mother Martha Williams and his brother Eric Williams, because Simon had been trapped in the kitchen when a fire started, but he was completely fine, it was obvious that Simon was lying when he said that the cause of the fire was because he was trying to use the stove by himself. It made me curious to find out what actually happened, and I also wanted to find out how Simon got his powers in the first place. But since we didn't get an explanation, for now, it looks like he was born with them. I agreed with Trevor when he told Agent Cleary that making him wear a wire to Martha's birthday party was crossing a line. But Agent Cleary told Trevor that he would go back to jail if he couldn't figure out what the cause of the kitchen fire was. So Trevor didn't have a choice. But Agent Cleary's plan ended up not working anyway, since Trevor found out that Simon was alone when the kitchen fire started, so there was no one else he could talk to find out what happened. But it was funny when Trevor went to different people at the party, asking them to tell him stories about Simon when he was little, but nothing that they told him would be able to help Agent Cleary. But then Trevor saw Eric make Simon angry, which caused Simon to break the new island in the kitchen. I was really proud of Trevor when he destroyed the wire, since it showed that even though he was risking going back to jail, he couldn't handle continuing to betray Simon. And it also showed that Trevor has grown to care for Simon when he saw Simon get out of the car and thought something was wrong at first. But then Simon told him that he just got off the phone with Janelle, who had been trying to find Simon and Trevor to tell them that they had both gotten callbacks for Wonder Man. I liked the backstory that we got in episode 4 about Damar Davis, since it showed why the doorman clause, which bans people with superpowers from Hollywood, was created. And we also saw Simon's reaction to the announcement about the doorman clause, which is why he has to hide his powers as an actor. I also thought Josh Gad was really funny, playing an exaggerated version of himself. And his remix of In Summer from Frozen was pretty catchy. Simon's powers definitely came in handy for him and Trevor when they were being held at gunpoint by Patrick Connor, a drug dealer from Trevor's past. But thanks to Simon's powers, Simon and Trevor were able to free themselves. However, things weren't looking good for Simon when he and Trevor realized that a kid named Jaden had filmed everything on his GoPro. So Simon and Trevor chased Jaden, since if anyone saw the footage, it would ruin Simon's acting career. After they met up with Jaden, he told them that in order to prevent him from posting the footage on YouTube, he wanted Simon and Trevor to get his motorcycle for him, which he claimed was stolen by someone named Esteban. And since Simon and Trevor didn't have any other choice, they agreed. It was funny when Simon and Trevor went to Esteban's house with the plan to pretend to be undercover cops, since it ended up not working, since Trevor was recognized as the Mandarin right away. Simon and Trevor also found out that Jaden was lying when they asked Esteban for Jaden's motorcycle, and Esteban told them that the motorcycle was his and that he and Jaden used to be friends and business partners in their candy business before jealousy ruined their friendship and business partnership. Unfortunately, while this was going on, Jaden was waiting in Simon's car when Patrick showed up looking for Trevor. Things were not looking good for Jaden when Patrick was holding him hostage in order to get Trevor to come out of Esteban's house. But Trevor found out from one of Esteban's friends that the footage on Jaden's GoPro couldn't automatically be uploaded to YouTube without a computer. So Trevor was able to get Jaden to put the GoPro through the mail slot, and the footage was deleted. And luckily for Jaden, Esteban's neighbor called the police and he was saved. It was also nice when Jaden apologized to Esteban for getting greedy, and Esteban forgave him. While this was going on, Janelle called Simon and told him that his and Trevor's callback had been pushed up. So Simon and Trevor had to quickly leave Esteban's house so they would make the callback. It was understandable why Simon was nervous about his Wonder Man callback, since it was his dream role and he didn't want to do anything to mess it up. But since Simon did a scene from Pretty Women instead of an improvised scene like Von Kovac wanted, and Von told Simon he was disappointed, things weren't looking good for Simon. But then Simon asked for another chance, and Simon and another actor started to improvise a scene, and the other actor called Simon a freak and told him that they all knew his secret, and Simon punched the other actor through his head. And when that happened, I was wondering what Simon was going to do, since after something like that, there would be no way for him to continue hiding his powers. But lucky for Simon, he was just dreaming. I felt sorry for Simon when he told Trevor that he couldn't show who he is underneath like Vaughn wanted them to, since if he did, he would be kicked out and he would never be allowed to act again. So I agreed with Trevor when he told Simon that the real him isn't his condition, it's the sum of everything he's experienced. And Simon went back to the callback, and he and Trevor read the Wonder Man scene together. And after all the other actors had left, Vaughn told them that Simon got the role of Wonder Man, and Trevor got the role of Barnaby. When Trevor told Agent Cleary that he was right about Simon and that he needed to get more evidence to prove it, but that he needed time and he couldn't be pressured, I had a feeling he was just saying that so he wouldn't go back to jail, and not because he was going to continue betraying Simon. Since at this point you could tell that Trevor had grown to care for Simon, and considering what Trevor ended up doing for Simon, I was right. I didn't blame Simon for being nervous about his and Trevor's New York Times profile, especially since he told Trevor that the woman writing it, Kathy Friedman, was a character assassin, and he was worried that she would find out about his powers. So Trevor told Simon to act more charming so Kathy wouldn't write anything bad. And it was pretty funny the way Simon was acting while Kathy was around. I didn't blame Simon for being worried when he found out that Kathy talked to Vivian, considering how their relationship ended. So it made sense when Simon met with Vivian so he could find out what she said. And when Vivian told Simon that he didn't have to worry and said that she didn't tell Kathy his secret, based on how the scene was going, it sounded like the secret that Vivian thought Simon had wasn't that he has powers, but was that he's gay. And based on what Vivian was saying, it seemed like it was meant to be taken that way. When Simon found out that Kathy also talked to his mother Martha and his brother Eric, it was understandable why Simon was worried about what Eric said, since, like he told Kathy, they had a complicated relationship. But Kathy told Simon that Eric said lovely things about him, and you could tell that Simon was relieved about that. And even though Simon didn't have anything to worry about, Trevor definitely did, since Kathy told him that she talked to witnesses who saw him get arrested at LAX. And even though Trevor denied making a deal with the government, when Kathy asked him if he did, he later told Simon that he had been spying on him for the Department of Damage Control, and Simon was understandably hurt about this and blew up the Wonder Man set with his powers. It was sad to see the tears in Simon's eyes when he was on the phone with Martha, especially when he told her he loved her before hanging up, since he clearly thought that that was going to be the last time he would get to talk to his mom, since he knew that the Department of Damage Control were coming after him after they found out about the explosion on the Wonder Man set and they knew that he caused it. But then Trevor reprised his role as the Mandarin and took the blame for the explosion on the Wonder Man set, and that showed that he really regretted what he did to Simon and was willing to do anything to make it right. I was happy for Simon when he found out that the glasses he was wearing as Wonder Man were the glasses from the original Wonder Man movie. You could tell he was in awe when he found that out. I was also happy for Simon when he, Martha, Eric, and Janelle were watching Wonder Man. It was nice to see how proud everyone was of him. And it was funny when Simon noticed that Eric was crying. It was also funny when Vaughn said that he didn't believe in doing sequels for anything, and Simon agreed. But then Simon and Vaughn also agreed to meet up and discuss what would happen in a sequel if they were to do one. Since Simon was following Chuck Eastman around as research for his next project, it made me wonder what his next project was. But since Simon told Chuck that he couldn't tell him what it was, us as the audience didn't know either, until Chuck was able to make it possible for Simon to follow him around at work, and we found out that Chuck worked at the Department of Damage Control, which then made it obvious that the whole doing research for Simon's next project was a ruse, and Simon was actually trying to break Trevor out. It was also pretty funny how Simon wouldn't tell Trevor who replaced him as Barnaby, since he knew that Trevor would be upset if he found out that it was Joe. It was also obvious that Simon was the anonymous donor who put money into Chuck's account, since he wanted Chuck to be able to take care of his family, since he knew that Chuck would get in trouble when the Department of Damage Control finds out that he was the one who let Simon in. I don't know if there'll be a season 2, but I really hope that there is, because I really want to see what Simon and Trevor do next. And if or when we see them again, they will obviously be on the run, since the Department of Damage Control is now looking for both of them. Thanks for watching, guys! If you saw Wonder Man, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. My next video is going to be a review on the off-Broadway musical Heathers. So if you want to see that video, or any of my other future videos, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.